Hi everyone, my name is Ruth, I'm a youth worker here, and today I've got a really interesting video for you. I had the opportunity to have a chat with one of my friends, Cali. Cali does the same job as me, so she is a youth worker in a church over in Arlington, Virginia. I hope I got that right, which is super close to DC. She is also she was a politics student, so she's really up to date with stuff that's going on, and I really wanted to talk to her today about how we as Christians can can react to things that are going on in the world that aren't so good. And I hope that you really enjoy this video. It's longer than normal. I tried to cut it down, but there was just too much in it that was great. Yeah, what we're talking about, I just wanted to do a brief introduction, a really brief because this video is already like 20 minutes long, is that we're talking about some of the riots that happened in Washington DC about 2 weeks ago. Cali does a really good job of explaining about it, but that's what we're referring to. But I think that this can be applied to, things that are going on in our country, the coronavirus and everything, I think, comes down to this. And there will be other stuff going on in the world in a few years that we won't know how to react to as Christians, and I think that a lot of her points will stand. So that's why I've kept it so long and I've kept it all in. So I really encourage you to watch it. I think it's great and it's funny. There's some funny bits and it's not all serious. But yeah, I hope you enjoy, and I will check in with you at the end as well. So enjoy.
Okay, hi.
Hello.
You want to introduce yourself and your cat?
Yeah, this is Kenma. Say hi, bud. He's very excited to be here. My name's Cali. I live about 10 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. in Arlington, Virginia. And a fun fact is that for about 6 months, I interned on Capitol Hill, which was really cool. And I got to see the president of France give a speech on the floor of the House. So that was a really cool experience that I'm very lucky to have had.
Who's the most famous person you met there?
There's people who are they're famous to me. I don't know if they'd be famous to y'all.
They're probably famous to me, but no one else.
John Lewis, I met him in an elevator, which was pretty cool. He just passed away. He was a huge civil rights leader in the 1960s. And yeah, I walked into an elevator and he said, "Hi, how are you?" And I was like, I'm good. Thank you for your service.
So me and Cali know each other because we used to work together and we were roommates for a bit at our job. And I was thinking about the time when we were roommates, because I like to start off with a funny story. Don't have that many funny stories together because I feel like everything we went through was really intense. Like there was a lot of difficult moments, not with us, but that we had to deal with. But nice. So we worked at the office, which was like a 5-10 minute walk away from where we lived, and we would be in the office until midnight, pretty much every night. And we would have to walk back, and everyone was asleep, and we had to be really, really quiet until we got to one point where there were bears, and we knew that there were bears around. So apparently, I only know this because of camp, but when you're near bears, you've got to be really noisy to scare them off. So we would be really, really quiet, and we'd get to a certain point, and then we'd start singing All Star. Yeah. And then every morning we would be late to breakfast because we couldn't get out of bed because we were so tired. So we got up when breakfast started, and then it was late and everyone looked at us. So that was good. We were good role models. But I wanted to ask you a few questions. So you studied some form of politics, is that right? There's a title. And you studied in Washington DC, which obviously has been the site of some pretty major stuff happening. So my first question was, how should we as Christians react to all of the horrible stuff that's going on in the world right now?
That's a loaded question for sure. And it's something that I've been, and I'm sure most people have been really struggling with, because my first thought as a Christian when I approach politics is empathy, and to try to put myself in other people's shoes. And Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. And I feel like that should be my first instinct, and that should be what I do first. But that can be really, really difficult. That's what I've been really struggling with. Obviously, it was about a week ago now that the insurrection happened, and you're watching your TV and you're thinking, how on earth can I show these people love and kindness and empathy? So I think where that has led me is trying to find glimmers of God's promise. Because as much as I wish God promised us that everything is going to be fine all the time, God's promise is really that God will walk with us and will be there with us. And so when I'm really struggling to find some sort of hope or really joy or happiness in all of this craziness, I try to look deeper and smaller and just look for glimmers of that promise that God is walking with us. So, for example, when the insurrection happened, one glimmer was that, you know, they were able to carry on the vote. This terrible thing happened. It shut us down for about 10 hours, and then they came back and they finished the work that they did. And then after that, a representative named...
What happened? I'm not sure how much people would know.
Yeah, for sure. So welcome to American politics. Yeah, we do some things pretty weird. So in our effort to create two things, checks and balances, which has not been working great so far, but we're trying. And then also to make sure that every voice in the country is heard, we created this wonky system called the Electoral College. And so that means that when you vote, you are voting to elect delegates. In this case, it was either a delegate in support of Joe Biden or a delegate in support of Donald Trump. So each state, depending on how many people are in that state, get a certain number of delegates, and then they go and say, my voters asked me to vote for Joe Biden. And that's how the president is actually elected. So even though we had known that Joe Biden won, we have to take this formal step, which is to have all of the representatives in Congress and Senate say, my state voted for Biden, my state voted for Trump, and then have that officially counted. So it's really this formality that until this year had, like, nobody watched it, nobody paid attention, like it had never really sparked any controversy, especially because usually at this point the president or the candidate who has lost has conceded. That didn't happen this year. So Trump basically told Mike Pence, who as the vice president oversees this, and said, like, tell them their votes don't count, which is just not a thing. But he convinced some of the southern representatives who are a little kooky
That was a really nice way of putting that.
Thank you. He convinced them to object. And so when they objected, they had to go into like this 2-hour-long session, and they were basically trying to override what the election had said. So at the same time that's happening inside, outside, Trump goes and talks to a bunch of his supporters and said, they're trying to steal the election from us. We all know the election was a fraud, all this crazy stuff. And you need to go, he said to them, march down to the Capitol and make your voice heard. And then some other speakers were a little bit more, Rudy Giuliani, who's Trump's lawyer, said trial by combat. So they're basically saying, go make sure this vote doesn't count. And some people took that really, really to heart, and they broke through into the Capitol. 5 people were killed at this point. There's still some people in critical condition. And they were trying they were trying to, basically they did what the president told them to do. But when once those people were all cleared out of the Capitol building, all of the representatives and senators came back and they finished that electoral college vote, and they still declared Biden president by the end of the night. So even though it was a crazy process, it still got done in the end. And then one really cool story was a representative named Andy Kim, who actually, I'm Presbyterian and he's actually a Presbyterian too. He stayed late. I mean, it was 4 a.m. by the time they counted all those votes. He stayed after and cleaned up the mess that those rioters had caused. So that was one glimmer for me of there's still hope, hope out there.
That was a very dramatic ending. I enjoyed that. So one thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if this is more in the US or the UK, but often I'll hear people talking and they'll say stuff that I completely disagree with, but then they call themselves Christian. So how should we respond to that? So like, the example that I've noticed a lot, more in America, more in the southern states, is people talking about white supremacy and then calling themselves Christian. And I think that we can all agree that white supremacy is evil and ridiculous.
Yeah. That's a great, you're just coming with these great questions, Ruth.
You know.
So yeah, one thing that I've learned, there's a study recently done, and it said that 3 out of 4 Christians who are interviewed by the news and the media in the US are actually just from one Christianity branch. So they are, the media paints this picture of it's religion versus progress and all of this stuff, when really they're not interviewing all of the people out there, and there's a lot of diverse opinions. So when I do come into contact, and like I have people in my own family who say I voted for Trump because I'm a Christian, and I say, how, where does 2 + 2 is equaling 5 right now? Like, that's not, what does he do that embodies a Christian for you? And that's my big question whenever I run into people like that, is I ask them, what about this person, or what about this belief embodies Christianity, embodies the life that Jesus asked us to live to you? And a lot of times it boils down to like the hot topics, like abortion and LGBT rights and things like that. And to me, no matter what my personal beliefs are, to me, if that shouldn't be the one be all, the one end all that you cast your vote on. Sure, maybe Trump has the same mindset as you on those 2 topics, but that's really overpowering all of the hate that he spews to you. And that's, trying to take them through the process of Jesus said the most important covenant, besides love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, is love your neighbor as yourself. Do you truly believe this person embodies that commandment? And sometimes they say yes, and at that point I know I can't. It's a lost cause. Nothing I say can do that. But sometimes that question makes them think, I put this one cause above all else because I believe that's the most Christian thing you can do. But Jesus is telling me the most Christian thing I can do is support someone whose bottom line, whose policies reflect caring, kindness, and love. And someone who tells white supremacists to stand back and stand by, which they then did and attacked, that's not someone who I see as loving.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you said that so eloquently.
Oh, thanks.
The last deep question is, you guys are about to go through a massive change. So this goes up on Tuesday. which is a couple of days before the inauguration, something like that. And obviously the UK, we're in lockdown at the moment, and there's a lot going on, and there'll be a lot of changes once things like once restrictions release. So as a Christian, again, how should we approach change?
Change on all levels, you mean? Just transitions in general, kind of? Yeah. So you can ask my parents,